Do you hate him more than you love your child? If you love your child more than you hate your ex, you will let your child have a good relationship, a good, strong, reliable, ongoing relationship with a father in his life.
Do you know your rights as a father going through divorce? That's what we're going to ask today on this episode of Ask the Lawyer. Hi, I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and my guest is attorney Chaim Steinberger, who practices in New York City. Chaim, thank you for making some time to answer our questions today.
It's my pleasure to be with you, Rob.
So we're talking about fathers' rights. Are there specific rights as a father, or times have changed, I think, from the time when it was just automatically assumed the mother was going to get the children and that sort of thing. Help me out with what fathers' rights are.
So you always want to think of rights and responsibilities, and they're bundled together. And so just to go back a step from where you were at, 100 years ago, children belonged to their fathers, and they were treated as chattel because a father needed the children to work in the fields.
Okay.
And then, of course, society switched all the way over where children needed their mothers, the tender years doctrine. And now we're somewhere back where we look at the best interests of the children. So we'll come back up to that on the custody issue. We always look at the best interests of the children. So the first question is has somebody been determined to be the father? Somebody could be designated as a father either if the mother puts the person's name in on the birth certificate, the father doesn't object, or the father can bring an action, or the mother can bring a paternity action in family court saying, Mr. Smith is the father of my child, and therefore he should have the rights and privileges of a father and also the responsibilities of the father. The moment somebody's been adjudicated or found to be or determined to be the father of a child, now the child has the right for the companionship, the love and advice and guidance of that father in the child's life. Now, the reason I say the child is because all of these arguments are much more powerful when we look at them from the child's point of view rather than from the parent's point of view. So even though a father may come in to consult with me and say, this is what I want this, it's a lot more powerful if when I present to the court, I talk about how the child will be better off. So every child has a right of his or her father and mother in his life. And so the question is, how do we do that in a way that's beneficial to the child and, of course, to the father also, because fathers also want to have influence in the child's life.
Let's talk about parental alienation then, Chaim. Explain what that is and why it's a bad thing.
Well, parental alienation is when one parent turns the children against the other parent. It's a form of child abuse. It's one of the most horrific things a parent can do to the child. And the reason that it's so terrible is because every child knows that he or she is one half father, one half mother. If you teach a child that his father is all bad, that means that the child goes through life knowing that one half of himself or herself is all bad. You've set up a dynamic, a fight, an internal fight within the child where the child feels like they have to reject parts of themselves. They can never trust themselves because they know that they're part father and father is all bad. And so it's terribly destructive in all areas of life, not just in one, besides which a child loses out on the love, companionship, and guidance of their father. So I usually tell parents, do you hate him more than you love your child? If you love your child more than you hate your ex, you will let your child have a good relationship, a good, strong, reliable, ongoing relationship with a father in his life. Now, alienation can happen in very subtle ways, or it can happen explicitly. Explicitly is when a father says, your father's a louse, your father's a failure, your father's a terrible person. That's obvious and sort of blatant alienation. But it could be something more subtle, like a mother telling the child, oh, you're going to daddy this weekend. I hope he doesn't lose his patience with you again. I hope he doesn't get angry at you again. Or it could be something even more subtle where mother tells a child, go to daddy, have a good time. Don't worry about me. I'll be sitting here at the front window waiting for you to come back as I miss you. And that sets up a dynamic where the child feels guilty being with the other parent. It's a very subtle form of alienation. And again, it's a terrible thing to have happen.
How can my attorney, Chaim, how can my attorney help me when there is alienation or I suspect there's parental alienation? What can you do?
These are very difficult situations to litigate. And so I would back up a second and say the best possible thing you can do is find, and this goes off into negotiation techniques and how to get best results. It's always better if we can find a way to work collaboratively. Game theory teaches that if we can find a way to collaborate, we'll each get more and we'll each come out ahead than if we are adversarial. And so if you can engender and foster an atmosphere of trust and cooperation, that's the best possible thing. The moment you get into litigation, it becomes really difficult. I've had clients spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've had clients spend the equivalent of a small house trying to get access to their children. They were happy with it. We got a great result. When a client calls me up and says, Chaim, you gave my daughter back her childhood, it's because every father comes in and says, in the typical case, alienation goes in both ways. Some fathers alienate the mothers, and sometimes mean and abusive fathers win the children over, and the children become part of the abuse to the mothers. I don't mean to say it's one way.
Right.
But in the typical case, it's a mother who has a children who alienates the father. And in those cases, every father comes in and says it's alienation. Every mother says, I'm telling the children they have to go to dad, but what can I do? He's a son of a bitch. The kids don't want to see him. And so it becomes very difficult. Remember, judges don't become judges because they're really smart and clever at figuring out tough questions and making tough decisions quickly. Judges, like the rest of us, try to push off the hard decisions. So a judge is going to try every possible intervention. Why can't you just do this? But mother says that it's this. Why can't you come earlier or come later or stop calling or call more often? And this is incredibly frustrating for parents. So a litigated case, it can be very long, drawn out, and of course, as it's drawn out, the alienation becomes entrenched. It becomes even harder to reestablish a connection, and the child grows older. As a child grows older, the courts defer to the child's wishes even more and more. So you can't delay, but on the other hand, you can't undertake this fight lightly. You probably have to assemble a war chest and be ready to fight and think strategically about it, because if you start the fight and then you have to give up in the middle, you may be worse off than if you had never started the fight. Because as people fight, passions become more inflamed, people become more entrenched, and adversaries become more vicious. And so sometimes starting the fight causes a worse result. You need the best lawyer you could possibly afford, somebody who's skilled at litigation, somebody who's skilled at negotiation, somebody who knows the literature and knows the facts about alienation, can recognize it, can present it properly to the judge to win over the judge's heart.
It's worth reiterating what you said at the very beginning. If we could all just look at it from the child's point of view, that certainly would probably help a lot.
Absolutely. From the child's point of view, if there's a way of, people come to me all the time, they're like, I'm going to fight. I'm like, wait a second. When was the last time I had somebody here came cross country? And I said, when was the last time you told your ex, wow, you know, I'm cross country. I don't get a chance to see little Susie. Thank you so much for taking care of him. He's like, I'm like, maybe you tell her that first. Maybe you can find a way to engender. So you want a lawyer who's a skilled negotiator who can bring down the tensions and the passions and try to work things out.
Chaim, lots of great information as usual. Thank you so much for your time and answering our questions.
You're very welcome. It's always my pleasure to share with you and your audience.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been attorney Chaim Steinberger in New York City. If you want the best information or you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, make sure to go to askthelawyer.com. Also, please take a second to like, share, and subscribe by clicking on the button below. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com.